Tonight, we have our Committee of the Whole agenda for Monday, October 2nd, 2017. Mary Beth, you please call the roll.
Soretta.
Here.
Foltz.
Here.
Fontaine.
Here.
Griffith.
Here.
Kiesling.
Here.
And Weirin.
Here.
Six
Can I have a
present.
motion? Thank you. Can I have a motion to excuse President Peters?
So moved. Second.
Foltz.
Yes.
Fontaine.
Yes.
Griffith.
Yes.
Kiesling.
Yes.
Weirin.
Yes.
Soretta.
Yes.
And Foltz.
Yes.
6 yes to excuse Councilman Peters.
Okay, thank you. First item tonight is discussion of North Canton City School levy by School Superintendent Jeff Wendorf, and I'm going to lead into Member Mark Soretta here to lead the discussion. Thank you.
Good. A couple comments. First of all, I want to welcome everybody here to the City Council chambers. These are your chambers, so this shouldn't be something that feels intimidating in any way. These are your chambers where you can state your piece and everything. So we hope they do come up with that here. Since this particular levy does affect the city, we thought it was a good idea to have Jeff Wendorf come up and go through some of it and explain some of it, and be prepared to ask some questions that we have accumulated from the community. I emailed Jeff all those questions, so this is something that's going to ambush him. I'm not trying to embarrass him, but I think that the whole idea here is to bring facts in, and that's really the whole idea. So, moving forward here, I want to start by just a couple things. This is a very special place. I think we all know that, or we would not be here. We wouldn't care so much to come up here on a Monday night at 7 o'clock. And it's a special place because of the bond that we have. The other day, I was working on the guard shack, little pet project of mine. There was paint some things, and it was a weekend. And this gentleman comes up to me. I never saw him before. And we had greetings. You know, we said, "Oh, what a nice day it was." It was like 90 degrees that day. And the gentleman apparently was he was here visiting for a couple of days, but he was in a competition in one of the churches for a choir. And he said to me, he said, "Man, this city is so inviting. It's so wide open. It's so clean, and I just feel like he's been walking the streets at night for the last couple of nights, and he says it's so safe and it's so lit up." He even said that the building across the street was kind of cool. And I said to him, I said, "Well, that's the sort of stuff." He said, "Oh, that's neat anyways." So I think that sometimes we take things for granted a little, because we do have a wonderful place here, and that we can do this. And first of all the things going on, and we pray for those people in Las Vegas, but we're a safe place. We've got police, fire, EMS. We've got great safe water. We've got great parks. So we have a lot of good things that we probably don't look at. And here we are, discussing whether to pass the federal levy. I know there are more important things in the world, but tonight we want to talk about that and make sure that it's the best thing for our community. So it is a kind of thing, and it does get personal with me because I've been involved with lobbying for so many years. But even with that, we need to bring out the facts, and that's kind of what we're going to do here. So as we go forward here, the final decision will probably be made in the voting booth. So let's make sure that everybody has the facts as we move into the voting booth, because that's really going to make the difference here. The last thing that we want to see, and I've seen it before, so have you, that 5, 10, 15 years from now, someone's going to sit up here and say, "Who the heck made those decisions?" And we get a lot of that here. Who the heck made those decisions back there and put us in that position? So that thing that really take a look at right here. So the agenda here, Jeff will come up and he'll give a good presentation, and then we'll kind of go through, and I have some questions for everybody actually that the citizens have sent in, and we're not going to give Jeff, some of these questions have no pertaining to the levy. So we kind of, so if you want to pass out some of that, you're more than welcome to see some of the questions that we get sent, and then there's the fact sheets that everybody knows that Jeff and I have talked about over time. But so we'll have questions that will come from council, and we'll be polite and civil with this, and then we'll move forward. And one of the things I want to make sure is that, we say this is a special place because we have a terrific bond between the school and the city. It's always been that way. Without the school, the city is not what it is. I think everybody realizes that. Without the community, the school is just another school that is in the system. So that's what makes it a little special. Let's move forward with that here. So handed out those folks to see. And Jeff, thanks for being here, and I look forward to hearing your presentation.
Serretta. I've got a couple documents. One for council. I didn't print enough for everybody because I didn't know we were supplying to everybody, but if
That's
you supply me, I have facts to correlate or compare to your facts. So I would be happy to share them.
To work with.
I wouldn't take any other way.
And I wasn't planning on reviewing that document. Okay. I think some of those questions are in the other items we have.
They're online, right?
Yes, they are. In fact, those are at the bottom of our FAQs on the website that you can see. And if they're not currently, we'll get them on there quickly. So, one other document that I'll start with for council this evening, and again, I did not bring enough for public, but their information is on the website. So if you take what we call the placemat, the big one, a lot of my correlations are to food. So the placemat, if you look at, on the process side, I won't spend a lot of time on the process. A lot of you have heard this. On the process side, we had 3 large community open meetings, open to the community, and had about 150 to 200 people at the Educational Futures Conference in November, where we talked about the future of education, what kids need to be able to know and do in the future, what are items that our facilities are needed for future education of kids, what kind of jobs and what kind of things we need to do to be able to provide for our students. After that, or during that meeting, we had an open invitation for anybody that wanted to join. The steering committee could. And it was an open meeting for the community process there on November 17th. Our first steering committee was November 28th of last year. Again, open. We didn't want to select a steering committee. It scared me to death because there was 40 people that attended regularly, and that's a big steering committee. But we wanted to leave it open for anybody that could attend to make those decisions. The purpose of the steering committee was to take the data or the feedback from our community meetings to analyze it, make some decisions, formulate some questions for the next community meeting to try to get a plan that everybody would be involved in and everybody would have input on. On December 16th, we had what we called Community Dialogue 1. Community Dialogue 1 was to talk about if this is what we said was required for our kids in the future, how do we compare at North Canton? Are our facilities, how do we relate those to what we think our kids need to be able to do? As you can see in the, I'll call it purple, plum. I hate saying purple, but plum. You see a couple of questions that were replied. We had work group sessions by table at the community meeting. Again, I think there was 170 at that December meeting. We took consensus by table. We also asked for feedback as individuals. So folks didn't feel like they were heard at the table. They were able to be heard individually. And we also opened it up online. If somebody couldn't be to the meeting, the presentations were online. We asked for feedback and did that. As you can see, some of the things that were talked about were physical condition of the building, what do you do with it, current facilities aligning with the future needs that we talked about in the first meeting, and you can see that the folks determined that, yeah, not so much. If this is what we need to be able to do with the kids, do our current facilities align with those needs? And the feedback you see is not so much. Then in January, our steering committee meeting met twice, and backing up to December, we asked a lot more questions. Those questions were developed, and again, table feedback, individual feedback, and online feedback. At the steering committee meetings in January, we talked about options. If this is where we need to go for our kids, and this is what we have, what do we need to do to address that? About 5 scenarios were discussed, 5 building options, and I believe it was 5. Our steering committee took the feedback and whittled it down to take 2 back to the community. And in that community, those steering committee meetings, we discussed a lot. There were 2 options that rose to the top. One was a PK4, both north and south, a 4-5-6 middle school, and an 8-12 high school. The second option was a 2 K3s, 1 north, 1 south, a new middle school, and a new 6-7-8 middle school with renovations to the high school. Renovations to the high school in both of those. There was discussion of the cost of those. There was a different cost. When we partner with OSFC, they base their calculations on square foot per student. They say that our high school is oversized for the number of students we have, so their option, if it was just their money or if they got their way, they would say fill that building to capacity and we'll fund all of it. The two options were, do we want to spend a little more money and not fill the high school and run our programs as we have them currently, or do we want to fill it and have our 8th grade in the high school every day? And those were the two options to take the community. At that community meeting then, you can see in February, Community Dialogue 2, some of the things that we talked about were which scenario do you want? Those two items were asked. You can see that scenario B, which is the current one that's on the ballot, were discussed. The steering committee had talked about those. You can see in the steering committee number 4 in February what was talked about. You also see at the bottom, and I want to make sure you see this, the bottom, the big box at the bottom on the green, it asked our community what they would support a tax increase for. The two highest responses were facilities and operations. Those two things that are our most critical need, facilities and financial stability. That's what's on the ballot. That's what both items are for. So you can see then it was taken to the steering committee number 5 in March, a board presentation in March 15th, and then final board approval a few months later. If you'll turn the page and look at the plan, the upper left-hand corner is what's called the Facility Condition Index. That's the amount of money compared to renovate as compared to build new. This is a 40-year renovation, not a 10-year renovation. Some contractors would say, I can fix that HVAC system for less than that, possibly, but is it at the standard of a 40-year building? If we use state money, they're saying that if you use our money, we need to have a high confidence level that it's going to be a 30 to 40 to 50-year building. So they're not going to give us money and let us use it on short-term repairs. That's why that Facility Condition Index is high. You see the replacement and the renovation costs, and the purpose really to replace 2 K3s, a 6, 7, 8 middle school, or I'm sorry, 2 K5s, a 6, 7, 8 middle school, and renovate the high school. So that's pretty much the planning process. When we got to, throughout the time, let me overlap a little bit, because one of your main questions, I believe, is how did we get to the finance package? What I just explained to you was primarily the facility package. We know that all along that the finance package is critical. Last year, in 2016-17, we reduced our expenditures by $1.5 million. We laid off 6 teachers. We removed 10 teachers from the middle school and had to lay 6 of those off, or 6 positions after the shuffle. This year we have $300,000 in reductions, and if we don't have increased revenues for next year in 2018, we'll reduce another $1.5 to $2 million. And when your budget is 80% people, that's the big part of the pie, and that's what gets reduced, unfortunately. Programs for kids and personnel. The board, and I'll answer one of the questions now. The administration, the finance committee, the board, I believe, had a work set. We had several meetings administratively to talk about how to handle our future finances. We had a finance committee, subcommittee, board subcommittee meeting. We had work sessions for the Board of Education, and then finally a board meeting to address our finances to determine what would be on the ballot. The recommended details I won't go through. You can see it. You can see some of the benefits. Those maps are pure concepts. You see the Claremont building, which is large enough to handle a K5. That's a concept. It's not what the building might look like. It's not where it might be, but it does reflect the square footage that a building would look like on that site. Okay, so it might not look like that as a footprint, but it's the relative of square footage. It does put it north on the property, so there is a access for buses separate from parents and visitors. That's a good thing. If you've not experienced some things in some of our buildings, that's not happening currently. It also puts the play space back away from East Maple. You look at the high school in the lower right-hand corner, it does a few things to help. It gives a pretty good drive up. The architects talk about that, where the middle school would be sitting on what would be the south side of the high school. Again, separate buses from parent, student drop-off and pickup. We could widen the 7th Street entrance. We could possibly take the west entrance through from 7th Street to 10th on our property, an internal street, to make a full loop, if you will. And we know that we have about 150 8th graders taking high school courses. Those that were involved in the community dialogue and also the steering committee didn't feel they wanted 8th graders in the building all day with high schools. So those are some of the things we're talking about. As you see the benefits, there's lots of them, but this benefits our students. What we need to do for future students, how we need to prepare kids for what they need to be able to know and do for their future. It gives us financial stability, and I'll address for how long in a few minutes when you ask your question. It addresses our facility condition concern. We had high community input into the facility plan. We believe that that's we had over 500 500 folks involved in discussing this plan and developing this plan. One point that we don't talk about in the benefits is economic development. This is over a $100 million project. So I would ask council, and I would ask everybody, has there been an economic development plan for the community of that size in the last 15 or 20 years? I'm not sure, but that's just rhetorical. You don't have to answer. That's a big project. That's a big project for income tax for labor. It's a big project for lots of things, for property values and so on. If we don't pass and we don't have increased revenues and if we have to use current operating and current PI to fix our buildings, we'll be looking at a $1.5 to $2 million reduction for 17-18, and therefore reducing programs for students and staff and other programs. Lots of different things we can talk about when reductions happen. The other piece that if this plan passes, and we do have 2 new K-3s, one at Claremont, one north, and a new middle school somewhere near the high school, there's a potential to have 52 acres available for repurposing in the community, in the city. We've talked a lot about economic development and future development. There's no other spots that have 52 acres to develop within the city. This would be an option. This could happen if we happen to vacate those spots. Things to consider. One of the questions I think that we talk about, what does it mean to district and city residents? The bond issue is 3.99 mils. For $100,000, that costs $140 a year. And in 2020, we have 2.5 mils coming off that's currently on for a current bond issue. That comes off. So the net increase after 2 years is $52 per year, additional to what you're paying today. So it is an increase of $140 per year after 2 years, and the reduction of that 2.5 when it's retired, it's an additional $52. 140 for 2 years, 52 thereafter. For a $170,000 home, which is our average, $237 a year for 2 years, and $89 per year following. Okay, no, you okay? All right. The 0.75 school district earned income tax, and it is a school district earned income tax. A school district income tax is not a municipality tax. It's for anybody that lives in the school district. If they live in a home, they can send their kids to North Canton City Schools. It's a school district income tax. In or out of the city, in or out of the township, if you look at your taxes and it says North Canton City Schools, it applies to you. And you have an earned income. 75 cents per $100 earned is the simplest way to look at it. 0.75 of an earned income tax is 75 cents per $100 of earned income. 75 cents per $100 earned. You could get fancy and go $7.50 per $1,000 earned. okay? So that's what it costs, in simple terms. That's what the earned income tax costs. We do have 3 community meetings planned on October 16th at 7 p.m. at Mary Evans ECC. And we'll put these out. We'll publish these. On October 17th at 8 a.m., and that site's to be determined. We want to do a morning meeting for folks who don't want to go out in the evening. And then also October 25th at 7 p.m. at Greentown Elementary. Anybody have any questions about the plan before we get into the questions? Anything that I said that you don't think is on the questions that I can answer? I would refer you to the Q&A on the website. It's very extensive. There's a lot there. Most everything that you have in your hands now is on there. And if you don't have any, please, there's also a place to ask a question. And we usually typically put those right on the FAQs once we're able to answer those.
Jeff, are you planning on, if this works out, to get the middle school somewhere on the high school grounds?
Yes.
We have room
Well,
to do that?
that's the intent. And until we pass, and until we have money in hand, we would start with the OSFC to advertise and bid for an architect and a construction manager of some kind, and there's different options to do that. The popular one now is a construction manager at risk, but we would hire with the state of Ohio both those folks.
How quick could that all happen?
I would say a month or two. The typical process is a year to plan and 2 or 3 to build. Contractors would tell you 3 to build. Owners would try to tell you 2. But you know, it's about a 4-year process. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff, you know, you talked a little bit about it before, but with a reduction in footprint and the reduction in schools, do you have any idea about what the overall operational savings would be?
Yes. Yes. You've asked that before, and so I found the answer. Yes. So new buildings with the OSFC have a targeted that we would want to do a build need to be a target for a LEED certified silver. LEED is a construction term for efficiency and so on. LEED certified silver or better, and we would have what's called an eco charrette, where the contractors, the architects, the owners, and the OSFC all sit together, and we identify things that we want to make sure are included in the plan to increase those efficiencies in energy, in conservation, and those kind of things. A LEED certified silver building is estimated to be 30% more efficient than current type buildings are in play. So if we spend $800,000 currently on gas and electric alone, you could factor in about $220,000 a year in savings in just gas and electric based on LEED certified buildings.
Thank you.
Jeff, how many jobs do you predict will be taken out of the city by moving schools up north?
So the prediction of how many jobs will be removed out of the city, should we move Northwood. There's currently a little over 30 employees at Northwood. Looking at a eyeball picture of who lives where and looking at addresses of current employees, 15 live in the district or in North Canton City and 15 don't. So we'd be looking at about 15 jobs.
And follow
Which we potentially could lose in first year alone in reductions if we don't have increased revenue.
Did the committee talk about or bring up the fact that what, we're taking 2 schools out of the Southwest District would do for property taxes in that area? An example is if you take Orchard Hill out of the Southwest, take middle school out of the Southwest, Orchard Hill area is full of a lot of what do you want to call it, factory homes that were built during the Hoover Age days, and not having a school in that area. What do you think that's going to do to those property taxes over there as you move those out?
Well, I know, here's what I know. 144 kids live within a mile of Claremont. 66 live within a mile of Orchard Hill. So when you look at density of students, that's a big difference. If you stretch it out, and that 1.5 miles, I believe, even includes the middle school current site. So it touches pretty close to that middle school site. I believe that a school district affects property values more than an elementary school affects a neighborhood.
I agree with that. So if that middle school is vacated, what could be done with that to generate revenue? Anything? Would that be parks? Would that be development? What would that be? So that would, what would be the replacement, if we had something to do to generate more opportunity if the school were to leave?
So there's options of what the school district could do. If the district sells the building as is, we're required by law to offer it to charter schools first. It's kind of like Acme saying, hey, we're going to sell our building, and Giant Eagle, do you want it first? Probably not something that we would consider to a competitor. There is money in the proposed budget to raise the buildings or flatten the buildings, abate and demolish. And then the district could make a determination on what to do with it. Field space for play space, or expand the park that's at the middle school with cooperation with the city. We could sell it outright. We could barter it for some other services or something else in kind. It would be school district owned property until the board decides what to do with it. The same with Orchard Hill, the same with Northwood. Some have talked about keeping Northwood, using it as offices and rental space for offices. It's a great site for field space and practice space and so on. Some of the logistics of putting a bigger building, a K5 on there, is problematic for access. As you may or may not know, the north, or the center point of our demographics of our kids, if you take our full district, is Orion or Grinders. So half of our kids live north of there. So to bring them, almost a mile south to a Northwood site would not be as economical from a transportation point of view, or quite truthfully a parent point of view.
If you don't mind, we'll move to some of the other, the school's very exciting, and that's the icing on the cake. Let's see what the cake is made of here.
Yeah, we want.
How are we going to pay for this thing?
Sure, okay, all right.
And we'll have some questions that were brought in. Most of the questions are about that. People want to know how is it going to affect them, and we want to know how it's going to affect the city, and that kind of thing. So we look at this tax increase, and I'll start off some things with and then everybody can come in if you want here. This vote, yes, is 2 tax increases for 1 vote. That is correct.
Correct.
One of them is for the new school, and that is the mill levy, the 3.99. That's for schools only. And that's the part that's exciting and everything. The other part is more is in questioning from the city side and most people is how are we going to pay? What is the earned income about? Okay. What is that for, first of all?
Sure. So the earned income generates about $5.8 million per year.
Did you say 5.8?
5.8. $1 million is to finish up the debt from the school project. $55 million is what is generated from 3.99 mils to cover $55 million. And that's, so that's what the 3.99 is. There will also be a portion of the earned income tax to finish up that project. So our portion is 55 million and about 15 out of the earned income tax, 15 million. There's also required permanent improvement, so that equals about 360,000. When you partner with the state, they say you've got to bank 360,000, in our case, a $500,000, 360,000 per year to fix the buildings down the line when they start to age in 10 years or a roof goes in, however long. The rest, 4.4 million, is for district operations. Estimated in a 5-year forecast, that's equivalent to 7 mils of operating. 7.04 is what that equates to. And that is estimated to grow about 2.5% per year. I can share with you the income tax. It's kind of small, but the income tax collections for our district since 1986. This is from the Department of Taxation. For the district, 5-year average is 4.1% increase. The 10-year average is 2.7%, and the 28-year average is 4.8% increase in income tax. As you know, a property tax only raises the amount that it raises on the day it's passed. So when you have increasing costs and inflation, that's why we come back all the time. So one of the things that we think is helpful for us in the earned income tax is that small piece of inflation. Is 2.5% equate to inflation? Not all the time, maybe not ever, but possibly. It's better than zero rate of inflation. And we would hope the folks in our city are earning more every year.
And this is a forever tax. It will
This
never
is
go
a
away.
forever tax, as is the city income tax.
And if I may ask, who decided to use this tax and why?
So, several reasons I just mentioned. The administration talked, and by administration I mean treasurer, superintendent, assistant treasurer, operations, anybody within our offices. The board on the finance committee, we have 2 members of the Board of Education on a finance committee that meets occasionally, and then ultimately the Board of Education had steering committee or public work sessions, and then also approved.
Here's a question that goes along with that from our community members. Why didn't the school confer with the city before earned income tax was used? Did the school really think the city would approve of it, and did they even think that community divide would be created?
So, we believe that the city would support the school and the Board of Education and the decisions made by it. We're kind of confused about this divide the city you refer to, the divide. Is there a divide currently? Because there's currently city tax and no city tax. This is the same tax for everybody, live in the city or not. It's the same tax. Irregardless of the current city tax, this is an addition to for all. It doesn't have an us and them, it's for everybody. Same with the property tax. 3.99 mils for all that own property, 0.75 for all that have an earned income. If you choose to live in the city, you benefit from a lot of the services that you mentioned at your opening. If you choose to live in the township, you have maybe a higher property tax, or you have other things that you either have that are different. Maybe you have some of those services, maybe you don't. But that's a choice that folks make, and it is the same, in our opinion, for in and out of the city. I'm not sure I quite understand the divide that you mentioned. I think as a past campaign chair, any tax increase creates a divide in opinion.
Yeah.
There's always a divide when you ask for more money. Those in favor and those not.
Definitely.
I think the other part of the question was, why didn't you come to us? Why didn't we sit down and have some pals about this?
I don't have.
When we did come to you about the SCA, or the CRA, right? You know, we sat down with you and your attorney, and, you know, the whole process we went through last year with that. I think we are taken aback.
And that was.
And we could have come to your meetings. Those were amazing.
Those were totally open, and I would ask why. I mean, Mark came to a couple.
Right.
This wasn't talking about doing any of that.
Right. So
No, but the plan was, and we have to finance it somehow. So I believe the mayor came to one with you, Mark, on a steering committee, and I think Mark came to one of the public meetings and also a couple other steering committee meetings. But, you know, I don't have a great answer for why. You know, I'm not sure if, and I can't answer historically, was the district involved and consulted in the development of the abatements in the past? And, you know, I mean, we could go on, and I don't have a great answer for you why,
but
except
in the last
that.
year you were, for sure.
And that was to increase the CRA, and also to talk about, our position was on the abatement.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we know one thing, we have to work together in a partnership.
totally agree.
Schools are most important to communities, neighborhood values, safety, and all those other things. So
Agreed.
we just have to figure out where do we go from here,
Yeah.
and is this the best vehicle for the voters to fund the project? It needs to be dealt with sooner or later. You know, how do we do it? So is this the right vehicle?
It's on the ballot, they'll decide.
That's right. That's right. It's on the ballot. They'll decide. I would.
November 7th.
Pardon me.
I said, well, no, November 7th.
November 7th, that's correct, yes.
Well, I'll answer some of this stuff here. I mean, you asked why the we part, why the city would not be. Well, a couple things, and they're right on the facts here. This makes us the highest. This is a 50% increase for the people that live in the city.
And 100% for those that don't.
On their earned incomes. Is that fair for them to have a 50% earned increase to pay our teachers an operating expense? That's a pretty heavy.
And it's a 100% increase for those that don't live in the city. It's the same for all.
I'm just asking questions that kind of got this. It's the highest in Stark County. We'll make it the highest place to live in Stark County, 2.25. And as this says on here, if you live in Akron and you pay 2.25, you're going to pay 3% now.
Correct.
So, and that makes this the largest increase in North Canton City history with this.
Correct.
So I guess one of the major questions on this was also about, you know, if a person wants to come here, say they want to come to North Canton schools, and this is the result or the consequences of this kind of thing, or a company that comes here that wants to build their place here, or they're building anywhere in Jackson or whatever, and they want their people to live here. They look at the schools. They all got nice schools now. We got really nice schools after this thing. But they look and they see that North Canton has an earned income tax, and it's going to be 2.25 for them to live in the city, and 0.75 if they live in St. Ives and St. James. So now, they have a decision to make. Do they live just in Jackson and go to Jackson or Lake? Or so it's an economic thing for us when you ask, you know, why wouldn't the city agree or come to this? Well, these are some of the economic things that we've been fighting so hard to keep at 1.5. We've laid people off over the years. We've brought, you know, things down as far as cutting and all that to keep it at 1.5, and now you want to raise it 0.75 either, which is a 50% increase. So these are some of the questions that are on here. You know, does that seem fair?
So a 0.75 school district income tax is just that, a school district income tax. It's not a municipal tax. I believe that, well, you know some of these. A third of the districts in Ohio have an income tax. It's not new. It's not something that we came up with last week. It's something that's been in play for a long time. Municipalities such as Bexley, Reynoldsburg, Lancaster City, Newark City, Northwest locally here, Bowling Green, all have, and there's many more, all have school district income taxes as well as city income taxes. Most of the school district income taxes across the state are 1% or more. Very few are less than 1%.
Here's something that
if I could.
Sure.
The equivalent to this earned income tax you saw, if we had asked for all property tax, it would have been 13 mills. 13 mills. We're currently second in the county in property tax. Highest. And we're struggling, and we have some financial issues that we have to address, or deep cuts are coming again. So the potential to have a different kind of revenue stream was intriguing, actually, and I believe it is good. So you have a property owner, and I don't know what the average property value is in North Canton City, but I know in the district it's $170,000. In the city, I'm not sure what it is. But if you have one of your bungalows or so on, I don't know what the value of those would be, but
Say 125.
125, 100 for my purposes. I'm easier. And typically they're on a limited income. So if we put 13 mills of property tax on all property owners and their earning power is limited, they're still going to have to come up with that property tax. On an earned income, it spreads it evenly between property owner, yes, they're going to have an increase, but also earned income. If you have high income, yes, you have a high tax payment. If you have a low income, you have a lower tax payment. It's relative to what is earned. We felt that that was something that was different than property tax, and it was more fair to property owners and workers.
So if I'm a senior citizen and I get, I don't know, $1,500 a year Social Security, and my property's, I'm sorry, a month, sorry. I'm living on a tight budget. And my property is $140,000 or $150,000. So as a fixed income earner, retiree, I'll still pay the $399 based on, there's not a discount to the
No, I
property.
believe the state took away the homestead exemption
Yeah.
and some other things, so, yeah.
Okay, so everybody pays it, no matter what age.
Yeah, and I'm not a tax attorney, but I believe that they took away the,
So
they
that's-
took away the homestead exemption and they took away the rollback.
So as far as like the, if I'm earning $25,000 a year on fixed income, would I be taxed?
It depends on what that income is. Is it retirement pension? No.
Yeah.
Is it Social Security? No. Is it estate winnings? No. Is it capital gains? No. It's earned income. If it's on your state tax, it's earned income, which you can deduct from your federal income tax if you file itemized. Some would say not enough people file itemized deductions. They can.
So it's based on
So
adjusted.
Jeff,
Yes.
question. So I've had a number of people ask me, hey, if it were just the millage, I would certainly pay it. I believe in that. I'm not sure about the other. Was there a reason was a risk to combine them as well?
Sure.
Was there a reason that you ended up doing it that way versus either or?
Yeah, so the combination, the two questions, one answer, or two questions and one pull of the lever at the, or whatever you do now to vote, is twofold. We have two critical issues: financial stability and our facilities. I mentioned the savings we can have based on more efficient buildings. $200,000 a year is a lot of teachers. We could also talk about the facilities that we need to keep putting money into. I should answer the question about what is our current PIs going for now. That's a question I think that you talked about. Our current permanent improvement that we passed several years ago, that was passed as $500,000 in technology, $500,000 in transportation, and $500,000 split between curriculum and facilities. So that's what was on the levy when we passed that on the PI in 2013.
One pool.
Yes, two questions, one answer. And quite true, I mean, I don't know if I directly answered. They're both important. If we
Yeah.
pass one now, we're going to dump, if we pass a facility now, we're cutting so much programming and staff, it's going to be very difficult
Right.
to maintain that. If we pass the operational now and don't address our facilities in the near future, which if we pass, say we pass in November with a 7 mil operating, do you think we really could pass a 4 or 5 mil
Next year.
in a couple years? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a big ask, absolutely. But we're at a point where they both are married and they're both tied together, and we're at that point where we're either moving forward or we're moving back.
Jeff, I have something on this state district income tax that someone sent to me here. And this is SDIT is what you call it. It was created for rural communities, where areas where property tax was not increasing enough to maintain their schools. This comes from the Ohio Department of Education. North Canton City Schools classified as a 5. They classify the schools based on high or medium income, low student poverty, and high population size. There are 190 schools, as you had mentioned, I think, before, using the SDIT. Of the 190 schools, 148 districts are classified as rural or small towns, which doesn't include us. Of the 190, there are 9 schools who are classified as 5, which is us. The majority of those have an ending to their earned income tax. Ours is forever, that you put on there. 3 have them are expired. Most of them were created in the 90s, from what the tax. And I have this here, and it goes down and it goes to category. You had mentioned Bexley. Bexley's like a 6, which is really high. If you've ever been to Bexley, it's where the Schottensteins.
And I would think I think that's where the governor's mansion is. I would think we would aspire to be like Bexley a little bit, both academically, school-wise, and city-wise. I mean, it's a pretty cool place.
The home values there, they were nowhere near, and just outside the city, so I just want to just kind of state that.
So how long-
Higher or lower?
Yeah. Lower?
Bexley City,
Who,
property values are lower than North Canton?
what you can buy a home for in Bexley?
I don't know that answer. I don't know that answer.
They're all stone houses that are right outside the city, or
Bexley's pretty exclusive.
we'll look that up. That's just,
Yeah,
okay.
that's good, yep. Yep.
So, going,
He meant higher.
I mean,
Oh, okay, yeah, totally agree.
yeah, they're higher.
Absolutely.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
So compare us.
So why
though.
wouldn't they,
We had a
why would,
factory
my
home.
question is, why wouldn't they entertain a property tax?
Yeah. No, I'm just saying to
But they,
compare us. we
and
have-
I
we
would
have
guess their
a
earned
lot of
income is a
factory
lot
homes.
higher than ours as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, maybe we can take some of that school space that we may get and turn it into some newer subdivisions.
No, not subdivisions.
We want to raise the property values.
That's not with subdivisions. That's services. So question, why forever? What made you decide forever? As far as
All of, and I'll use the word continuing, all of North Canton City's property taxes are continuing. None of them have a time-bound expiration.
No, we have levies that are.
Canton City Schools, North Canton City Schools.
Yes.
North Canton City Schools have all continuing property tax,
Levies, right, but-
yes. They earn the same amount of money as they
Right.
earned, yes.
Right, but our
Yes.
property values go up.
Yes.
and-
So from a financial planning point of view, it's very difficult, and you guys face this too, is you know that in a few years that you're either going to have to retreat significantly in your revenues or pass it again. The board has chosen to use all continuing as an approach because we can't come back every so often, as often as we feel that is necessary to continue that. And the earned income tax is, we address it just as a property tax.
Well, after you use this for a period of time of inflation, you're going to have to come back to the well and say, we need to go to 1%.
I don't know. I can't speak for future boards or future, just like you guys can. I mean,
We've been stuck at
we
1.5
have plans.
forever.
We believe that this would last us at least through 23. We hope that it would, but we can't. That's if state funding stays the same. Right now, it's flat for us. We didn't get an increase this biennium. Previously, we did get increases. We lost $2 million or more in tangible personal property tax over the years. $2 million a year we lost in TPP money. The state, of course, said they were going to replace that with a cat tax, which is
Well,
the invisible tax.
The property values are on the rise over the last year and a half, so you're going to start seeing more revenues just.
Not from property tax. It only gained, we only, well,
we have
new
to
homes.
Don't every so many years they have to reassess that, like every 6 years?
Yes, we have some increase, but that doesn't raise any more money. Regardless, what that does is decreases the cost for the rest of
So
the community.
So the only constant.
It only raises the amount of money it's on election day. It's a dollar amount, not a percent.
So
That's how a
tax rate
property
is a
tax
little bit-
works, yeah. Yeah.
Jeff, I had a question,
Mhm.
and I'm just reading through this now, so hopefully I'm on the right path, but if you turn this page over where you had fact sheet North Kansas City Schools 2017 levy, we talked about St. James. And down below after there's some examples and some figures on what the different taxes would cost a homeowner there. And you probably did mention this earlier in my notes. It says after 2019, at 2.5, do you have that? I'm sorry.
I think you passed it all.
I think you passed it. Is this
Yeah,
school,
he just-
this is school generated fact sheet, okay.
Well, the red is, just so to clarify,
Yeah.
the red is school generated.
Okay, the red is, the other questions came from residents or wherever you got
Came
it.
from, yeah, Mr. Serrata, yeah.
Okay. 2.5 mil fall off the end of 2019. So are we saying that effectively the 3.99 property tax levy will be overall, this whole school district reduced by 2.5 mil?
So you'll have an increase of 3.99 mils for 2 years.
2 years.
Currently, there's a 2.55, so you'll have 3.99 in addition to what you're paying today.
Right.
Okay? In two years, at the end of 19, 2.5 mils falls off.
Right.
So that reduces, you'll still have the 399, but 2.5 of previous goes away.
Okay.
and then you're gonna come back in 24 with another to add on to that? Is that what you mentioned?
I can't say that,
Oh, okay.
no.
It just
No,
said
I
it
mean,
here, we won't have to come back to that.
No, we think it'll last us through, we project it'll last us through 23, we would
Okay.
hope. Yeah.
I guess my point is, yeah, you're clarifying that issue, which I'm glad. Was there any consideration not to have a 3/4? income tax or 0.75 income tax, knowing
Yes.
that was going to happen?
So if you
To
look
go at
at,
a lower rate for all the residents in the school district that work here?
yes and no. If you look at the sheet that I gave you, if you can read it,
Yeah.
it's kind of small. You can only ask for income tax in 1/4% increments. So a quarter, 50, 75, 1. When we talked to the state auditor and asked for estimates, when we sent in our certification to the state, we said, this is the amount of money we need to pay back 15 million of the bond issue, to have 360,000 for permanent improvement, and to have that 4.4 for operating. They say that needs to be a 3/4% income tax. They tell us which percent we can use. So in other words, they tell us how much we need to generate, which one we need to use to generate. We said, and we determined it, we said, okay, here's how much we need, what income tax level is there? And you can only do increments of a quarter. Does that help answer?
Yeah, it helps answer. I just want to make sure that I was understanding it, that some of the millage is falling off. And whether it gets addressed in the future is another matter.
So on the 361,000 capital improvement fund that you have to siphon off,
Right.
what if you don't need all that money? Is it earmarked for that specifically? No
Yes,
matter what
the
year?
state makes
It
you
keeps
bank
building
that
it up?
for, how many years? It's forever, yeah. So it's a forced saving, it's a forced.
That's what I mean, it's
yeah.
like a rainy day, I didn't know if you could take it like a rainy day fund and move it around.
Jeff, I have another question.
Sure.
I heard from a resident. Is there a cap on income? I think we know some of our St. James and St. Ives people probably make some pretty good money.
I don't know, I don't believe so. Now,
Right,
there's a cap,
0.75% on your income.
earned income.
Right.
So I would recommend high income earners,
Start putting some in
well,
retirement.
talk to their tax folks. I imagine that most high income earners have a tax person, tax advisor. And
What
I
is
mean,
high income earners these days?
well, there is a question in Mark's, did I just, no, I just sent it. There is a question in the fact sheet that I would kind of draw your attention to. In the question, I think it's 13 and the ones that Mark passed out. We're very fortunate to have this great school system in our area, including North Canton. If a high wage earner values each of the several local school districts, this goes back to Mark's question, it talks about a tax liability of $2,000 and $4,000. A $267,000 earned income equates to a $2,000 tax liability. So that's a $267,000 income for $2,000. It's 75 cents per $100 earned. For somebody that earns $10,000 or $30,000 or $267,000. It would take a $1.3 million earned income to equal $10,000 tax. Okay?
That's just with the earned income tax.
That's just the earned income tax, yes. I just want to kind of give you numbers for what it talks about in there about having a $2,000, $4,000, and $10,000 tax liability. Those are the incomes that equate to that. But I would suggest that anybody that's over even close to those three numbers, 267 or 533,000 or 1.3 million in income, they're going to have a tax advisor, I would hope. They probably don't have that much money if they don't. I just passed out we call it a bond calculator for the property tax. It shows you exactly what you would pay daily, weekly, monthly, and semi-annually and annually through 2019, and then what it'll cost you annually after 2019 and 2020. And once again, if you have a home or a property that's more than 300,000, we hope that you can add two numbers together. So take 300,000 and 100,000, and there's your cost. So.
Jeff, back to the earned income thing also. And I don't know how many teachers you have within the system, but for teachers alone, they struggle to get a 2 or 3% raise, maybe.
None for the last two contracts or 6 years.
But now you're asking them to pay 0.75 back.
We're asking them
for
to
the
pay what
teachers,
other,
and it takes them backwards again.
asking them to pay what other residents pay. It's the same. It's either all in property tax or a split between property tax and income tax. It's either 13 mills of property tax or 3.99 and 0.75. That's the money we need. And to generate it, we said 3.99 in property tax and 0.75 in earned income. It could have been 13 mills in property. They would have still had to pay that increase in property tax. It equates to the same amount of revenue. And yes, I can't talk about salaries outside of negotiations. Our teachers have not had base raises on their base income for 2 contracts. That's 6 years. And other districts, one of the questions on here is where do we stand in the county? We're middle of the pack now. We used to be top 3, I believe. Middle of the pack now and falling fast. The local to the west is settling on a 3.33. We're lower than some other districts that I won't mention that we would pride ourselves on being ahead of. We have a great staff. We want to hire the best. We want to retain the best. And quite truthfully, it's going to get harder if we don't be competitive in that.
A couple other questions here on the earned income. Are children with summer jobs required to file or pay on the earned income tax?
I'm sorry.
Are children with part-time jobs are required to file and pay on?
I didn't see that, but if it's over a certain amount, they have to file, but it's earned income. Yeah.
And are retired folks with part-time jobs required to pay that even so any earned?
If it's on your state tax, earned income. Yeah.
So based on another accountant sent me this here, everyone who lives has to file an earned income tax.
If they live in the school district,
right.
You're
no
required, employers are required to hold, just like state taxes are required to hold the school district income tax as well.
Even if they don't have to actually file a regular tax form. This is another tax form they have to file. Even if they don't, they're required to file a state or federal because they didn't make enough. They still have to require federal.
I don't know what the rules are.
I
don't know what the rules are on the bottom. I don't know that answer. If you make less than a certain amount, you don't file. I don't know what the threshold is on that. I'd have to ask a tax person. My daughter didn't file because she didn't earn enough money. Darn it.
Thank you. It's been very educational. Do we have more
Yeah.
to cover?
Questions?
Well, go ahead, Ken.
I was gonna.
Well, there's one here about deductibles. It says here that some of your people are talking about, not deductibles, but deductions. And that, and in this particular situation here, they mentioned that there was some misinformation about this being deductible. Only about 30% of the folks itemized their deductions. So just want to make that clear. It's not deductible for everybody.
I'm not sure where the 30% came from. I don't know if that's accurate.
That's a tax.
But anybody can file a itemized deduction.
Right.
So anybody can file.
Okay. Just wanted to set the facts. We're getting the facts.
Right, facts.
Okay. Any other questions that
No.
from the council about David, Mayor? Any questions that you may have?
Yes, I would. First off, Superintendent Wendorf, I appreciate you coming up here to answer the questions. Because as I'm sitting here and looking at everybody in the audience, we have a lot of people that love the schools and love our students and our teachers, and it's really, really important to the community.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've got 6 kids, all 4 of them are still in the Hoover school system, and then 2 are up in college. So, and then my wife went through the Hoover school system. So, and I think at least just an observation here as we're going through this whole process, where I can empathize the most with you standing there at the podium, it reminds me back it was back in 2006 when I first began serving as mayor. And we knew that the Hoover Company was going to be leaving. And we had to make reductions. So I had proposed to increase the income tax. And I took the podium right where you're standing, and I had Pat Diorio, who's to the right of me, who was on council at the time. And we had Marcia, who was on council at the time, and Doug was on council at the time. And I had an excellent presentation. It was not as close to this graphic here, because this is impressive, it's nice. But I thought it was probably the best presentation I put together. And it was not received very well.
I understand.
And I survived it because now Pat's working here with me on the same team, so that was a good thing. I think what's tough is that when you look at the challenges that we're facing, and before we went and had the presentation to council to increase the income tax. You know, why did I do that? Because I'm looking at it and thinking, we've got 116 full-time employees. We've got police, fire, EMS, water service, sanitary sewer service. So I went to all the employees, all the department heads, and we had our first meeting and said, you know, let's prioritize the service. What's most important? And we went around and every department head said what they thought was the most important service that you could provide to people in the city. And what do you think their answer was? Well, when you talk to the fire chief, he says, well, you wait till you have a fire call and you need you need the fireman to come to your house, or EMS. And then you had the police, well, wait till somebody's breaking into your house. We'll see how important the fire department's gonna be then. And then you had the sanitary sewer crew say, well, just wait till your toilet's backing up in your basement. We'll see how important the other services are. And then the water, you know, you take it for granted. Every time you flush the toilet, it's our department that keeps it safe. It was really an eye-opening experience for me because you're trying to pit people in the city against each other as to what's most important. And then I went out there and was trying to do the same thing with, you know, do we reduce the police? Do we reduce the fire? Do we reduce the EMS? And everybody has so many strong feelings about it. And then I'm standing there thinking, well, who do I say no to? Do I say no to the police, the fire, the EMS, the people that haven't had raises for 5, 6 years? And now we're looking at, you know, a cut? So to kind of at least give some perspective, at least how I'm seeing this, is that one of the things is that when you look at challenging circumstances like this, one of the mistakes that came about when we were going through this when Hoover left is you don't want to pit people against each other. Are you for the schools or against the schools? Are you for the fire department or against the fire department? And that's something that we've got to really, really be careful about. Because in the end, one thing that I think we all know here is that the only way that we succeed is when there is agreement. When there's agreement, there's a place of power in the city. When there's disagreement or division, it's a place of powerlessness. I mean, that's something that we've learned. And when we're looking at, you know, perspective on this, and I think as the council members, and certainly myself, when we look at just the city's income tax alone in the year 2000, it was $7 million, just over $7 million. By the time Hoover left and we had the economic downturn, our income tax was $5.4 million. It was a 23% reduction. We still had to provide the city services. So now I think when we're looking at an increase for the schools, it's not that people are for or against the schools, because everybody here knows we need this. Everyone in this room knows we need the schools. I mean, we absolutely need it. The question is, you look at it as a matter of perspective. We're looking at an increase. Just with the income tax is $5.8 million for the school district. That was more than our whole budget in 2010 as far as the income tax.
You have 600 employees, 4,500
Absolutely.
students to educate.
I mean, you have more employees. You're one of our largest employers. And so there's just a tremendous amount of need and service that's there.
Agreed.
I guess what I'm getting at is that you know, we're also, as the council, charged with the responsibility, and also as the mayor, is that we have to bring jobs. I mean, if you don't have jobs over at the Hoover Company, you don't have jobs along Main Street, you do not have money to pay for the police, the fire, the EMS. It's just not there. Also, the property values. You know, one of the concerns is what happens when we lose jobs, because, and to clarify this, when I was asking for the income tax, not only did the council tell me we're not raising the income tax, they said, but we're going to have you do a performance audit by the state auditor. And at the time, I was, gosh, they're pretty rough. I mean, this is, I can't believe you're doing this. And you know what? Two of the best decisions that the city ever made was to keep the income tax where it was at, and also to have the performance audit. Because then it took the argument out of it. It took the argument completely out of it. And you know what? We got through it. And so, and Jeff, just so that everyone here knows, and Mark and Jeff and I, we've sat down individually and we've talked about this. And there was nothing that was held back. You know, this is like, we're kind of playing this out again, you know, for everybody here. But, and I know that I've talked with the other council members, I've talked with members of the community, so it's not like, you know, this discussion, this is the first time we formally had the discussion, but you know, we've went through this a number of times. And so I guess what I'm getting at is that it is a, I think the struggle from my perspective is strictly looking at the income tax. That's a real struggle. And at the same time, I'm also looking at it thinking, all right, well, once this decision is made, where do we go from here? You know, what's plan B?
Should it pass? Should it not pass?
Should it not pass?
Should not pass, we're in retreat mode. 1.5 million in reductions or 2 million in the next year, and then further cuts if we don't generate revenue the next year. One point I want to clarify is I believe that the city feels, some city council members feel that an income tax is reserved for municipalities.
Yes.
I contend that that's not so. And I believe that the city forgets that the city also has property tax. You mentioned all the services that you provide with the income tax, but you also have a fire property tax. You also have 2, I believe, ambulance EMS income taxes. You have a sewer, storm sewer, and you also have a street levy. So there are property taxes that the city puts on that, you know, it also generates revenue.
But go ahead, finish what you're
That
going to
also
say.
generates revenue. So
Right.
you have 2 streams of revenue.
Right,
When your income tax isn't enough, you ask for a property tax. When our property tax isn't enough, we're going to ask for an income tax.
This is the first time that it's ever been done. Right.
Here,
And so what I'm saying is that it's perfectly legal,
yes.
but I think there's just been an informal understanding, you know, historically, that it's just never happened before. I mean, it's the first time that there was an income tax that was asked by the school.
Correct.
Which is okay.
Here.
That's all right. I mean, we can do that. I think the challenge is, though, it's kind of like we've worked very hard to keep that income tax at 1.5%. And the reason being, why did we do that? So that we can bring the jobs here. And we do know for certain. And how do we know this? Because we've asked the companies that have moved in over the Hoover District. Why did you come? We've asked all of them. Because the income tax is at 1.5%. You don't have to pay to park.
I believe
And you got a
that
great community.
have a great community, absolutely. I believe that a lower property tax or a less increase in property tax and an earned income tax is more beneficial to businesses. It's less of a burden to a business owner who wants to come in, that he has a property tax. He passes the other on to his employees.
Right.
And if you live in it's a school district responsibility. If you live in the district, you pay. And so I believe that it would build economic development. I believe that by trying to keep our property taxes in check as much as we can, that it could build, plus the whole economic development of a large project like that, plus the potential acreage that would open up, plus us trying to remain competitive. So I appreciate your time. A couple things I guess I want to say. The fundamental question is November 7th is what kind of school district do you want? We can either move forward with what's on the ballot at 0.75% earned income and 3.9 mils of property tax and move forward, or we can move backwards and implement cuts and increase class sizes and programs and all those kind of things that go along with cuts. So we either move forward with what we believe is economic development and planning for our district and our community, for all the kids that we serve both in the city and out. We would think that we'd be able to partner and have some pretty neat things go on should we be able to move forward.
Jeff, thank you for coming up here.
Yeah,
It's been good, and you know.
Okay,
let me finish. It never had a standing. Thanks everybody for coming out here. I mean, look at this group. I know it takes a lot of pride to come here in schools. There's nothing more pride than when you're following the school system and trying to get it where it's at. And you can see that here with that. So it's not about who wins or loses. What's best for our community going forward with that. So we'll find out on everybody has good brains in their head, and they can go vote, and we can decide that way, and then we'll move forward at that point. So thanks again.
Can I end on a positive note that I think we can all agree about, which is my third grader was extremely excited this week to be a part of something that was remarkable that happened in the school system.
Right.
I know Mrs. Mance is here, and I'd like to have her stand up. It's something that I think we should all celebrate, so I think that's a great thing, and kudos to everyone here for that as well.
Yeah.
I didn't want to leave us without.
So Vikings strong.
special thank you to Mark Soretta, council, administration, and the school board here, and superintendent. It was a great informational session, very intellectual, and that's the way we should present ourselves in this community. So thank you once again. And there's not going to be other discussion. Member Osborne, there's not going to be other discussions, committee meetings.
No, I did not.
You're welcome to leave or be part of our agenda coming up. We have a lot on here. We'll probably be here a while, but if you want to leave, that's fine. We'll let you clear the room. Thank you.
Really don't want to stay for this.
It's going to take like a 5-minute.
It'll take a 5-minute recess. Roll call for the recess. Can I have a motion for a recess?
Motion for recess.
Is there a second? Mary Beth? Serena? Yes. Yes. Yes.
Fontaine?
Dominic? Dominic? What's that? For recess? Yes for recess.
Yes or no for recess?
Everybody's voted yes, thank you.
That's shocking.